Okay, so let's keep going here with Nathan. Um, or Nathaniel. So a couple of notes I have on here. I like the sort of detail stuff you're getting in the water line and the little island that happens out here. The water texture looks like this is maybe something you're getting with, I'm guessing with a material. I'm not really seeing any ripples on the side of the water, so that makes it feel like this is all textures that are doing this. To me, the disconnect on this one is in a couple of elements. One is that the camera is always angled, and so that gives the impression of like instability or like disturbed. And so like it's that camera angle is usually, like, if you look, like our horizon line is crooked, right? So it's not like our horizon line goes kind of diagonally, and usually that's used for like in horror movies, or when somebody is like not in their right mind, like maybe they've taken drugs or something like that. That's usually what they use that for in cinematography. And so I don't think that's necessarily what you're going for. So I think I would actually, probably the easiest way would just be to delete this camera and start over again. So the last thing is like, or not the last thing, but the other thing is I feel like the materials are doing something really weird. It's like they're very flat colored. There's a chance that what you did was create a toon shader material. There are some toon shaders in there, or possibly you just have one of the materials turned up too bright. I don't think it's brightness though. Maybe it is. But it, like, you're not getting any shadows, any color fall off. It's just like, if we go into Maya and I'll try to see if I can figure out how you've done this. Maybe you've cranked up your ambient color. Maybe incandescence. Incandescence usually makes everything like a solid color, and so even if your color is green, can't even really see that. Maybe you do incandescence in green. Or attribute editor, Lambert. Like if you do your incandescence in blue, like that's kind of what it's feeling like you're getting. And so there's no lighting information in this at all, and it's really hard to understand. So I think I would probably just redo all the materials, because it's not really making a lot of sense. A lot of times people will do this. There is a toon shader in Maya, and so let me undo all that to kind of show you. Can I undo far enough? Apparently not. Let's just assign a new material and just go back to a blend, right? And so a lot of times people, there is a shader inside of the rendering that's a toon shader, and you can assign a fill shader, and it'll also do something similar, but instead of that, like usually what people do is like one of these shaded brightness or shaded two-tone, and so you're getting this like cartoon look, but you're also still getting some information about the shadows and the lighting in there. And so that might be what you did, but either way, I think I would just go for something that looks a little more traditional. On top of all that, even though all of this is bright and glowing and has no shadow, your background is completely black, and so that's really doesn't make a lot of sense. Sorry, I got a text message I had to look at there. Like it just doesn't feel like there's any light coming from the sky, so why is all of this stuff glowing? And then finally, like your camera's kind of doing some zooming in and out too, even though it's kind of at an angle. And I think it moves so much that we're unable to necessarily track the cars clearly enough to see the motion that happens, and just everything kind of zigzags around. So I think what I would do is simplify that camera motion. Just like get in there kind of closer and maybe at an angle to where we can see what's going on. Yeah, and the camera motion is a little too much. The car feels like when I watch the car, this yellow car kind of go back into its lane, it doesn't feel like it's going at an angle. It just feels like it kind of slides over in front of that car, and that's really kind of not how physics would work on that. So I think this one would do with just another overall pass, just to clean up each of these pieces and keep pushing on them. So again, keep up the hard work. Let me know if you have any questions. So Sam. Yeah. So you got some cool stuff going on in here. You got this this texture on the ground. I believe this is hardware 2.0, and like you're getting some pretty nice renders out of here. Like you got some shadow stuff, and there's a little bit of work on the shadows that could be helped. But I like some of the ambient occlusion in the bridge. I actually like that you kind of redid the bridge in a completely different way, and you added this like elevated element to it, where the truck has to go up the incline. I think that there's a point where it feels like the red car actually backs up, and so I think the animation needs just a touch more work to kind of clear up what's happening there. So you kind of see that like right there, the red car feels like it kind of slides backwards. The other thing is like, think about where the camera's looking. So right now, like our center of our focus is like right here, and there's nothing really pulling our eyes to these cars. Now here we're focused in on them a little bit more, but maybe just sort of letting us know what we're supposed to be looking at with the angle of the camera. And then we do this where we kind of shift over, and like now all the action is happening down here in this bottom corner, and it's like we're looking over here. Like what are we supposed to be seeing over here? Like the first time I watched it, I expected something to come out of here. So like just kind of playing with the camera a little bit more to make sure you're showing the audience what you want them to see. I really like these little like rocks and hills you got going on over here. I see what you were trying to do with this. I think you were trying to get like this environment sky back here. But where we can see the edge of it, it kind of breaks the illusion. So I think if you just keep that going off into the distance, I think that would probably help with that as well. I like the buildings, and again, I like the texture you're getting on the water. So maybe a little noisy, and it has a lot of texture, whereas the rest of your scene doesn't. So it almost feels like maybe the rest of your scene could use a little bit more texture, or this could use a little less texture. Just to kind of keep a consistent theme throughout here. I like that you're getting texture in the scene just by having additional elements. And so maybe you could do the same with like some window pieces in here or something, just to imply some windows. Yeah, again, keep up the hard work. I like that I like what you were trying to do with the truck. I think just keep working with that animation a little bit more. And let me know if you have any questions. I'll talk to you, or I'll keep up the hard work. And so, Sean. So, just kind of looking at this, I think the sort of the star of this piece is that truck motion. Like I really like the overlapping action you're getting on the bed. Like you could really tell that you've focused on that. Your camera motion is looking good on both of them. They're both subtle enough, I think, to let us see the action without really distracting from it. The few things that are kind of hurting it, I think, are in the materials and the render. Like I think this is just a little too noisy, whereas some of these others are just a little too flat. Like the blue is very like the simplest like blue, like just cobalt blue. And like the only thing that's textured is the ground, and it's almost a little too repeating. So I feel like you need to kind of balance some of that out. And also, like, the bridge just goes into the mountain without any opening there or anything. So I think that needs some sort of solution on how you fix that. But like the animation on this truck is looking really good, and I like your models as well. So I think, yeah, the biggest thing I would work on is sort of pulling this environment together a little bit more so it feels like lived in. It feels like a real place. But yeah, overall, you got some great stuff going on here. Just keep up the hard work on it. Some of the notes that I gave earlier about the lighting, I think could be applied to yours. Like your shadows are a little jagged. And just kind of messing around with that a little bit more. If you're using Viewport 2.0, I think that sometimes you have to put a little extra effort into making it look good. I think your lights feel like they're in the right place. It feels like you got a little bit of color on them. I think now it's just like cleaning up those shadows to where they render a little bit better. So yeah, keep up the good work, and let me know if you have any questions. All right, Taylan. So, a couple of notes just right off the bat, like I really like what you've tried to do with the textures here, pulling this together on the ground, the background, even the water. I feel like it's a little. You'll learn how to do this a little bit better later on, but you really try to make an effort to get this stuff to line up and look consistent. And I think that's working really cool. The only thing that's really messing up is the way this is sort of applied here. It's kind of stretching a little bit, and once we get in here, like it's like a texture only. A texture only has so much resolution to it, or so many pixels to it, and we're starting to see some of those pixels where this is stretching it so much. The trick to that is to make this texture repeat. I don't remember if I showed this at this point or not, but let's say I applied assign a new material. Sure. Maya, let's do a blend. Let's see if I can find a texture. Let's do something. Let's go ahead and do like a. I don't know if I actually have any textures on my computer right now that are easy to find. What is this? Trees. There we go. Let's say that's the. I don't know why I have the picture on my computer, but let's say this is the texture that you're applying to everything, right? And you'll see that it's just this one image that's stretched across the whole thing. And if we start getting in here close, we start seeing the pixels, right? And so rather than make a bigger picture, one of the things you can do is you can make this picture repeat. All right, so if you go on File here, if we go to Place 2D Textures, we can make this repeat the UVs. Right now it's just repeating it one time and one time. But if I did 10 and 10, it would repeat it 10 times and 10 times. And I can get in here closer and it still has a lot of resolution to it. This one isn't a good example because it's not a repeating texture. One of the things that sometimes you can do to kind of cheat that is something like this, right? And then we get like a little less of a noticeable seam. But what you have to watch out for is this repeating pattern that would make when you do that. But that's one of the things you would probably end up doing is trying to make a seamless texture so you can have more resolution on your ground. Kind of the same with the water. The other thing with the water is like this texture isn't really changing on the water, so I think it needs like some reflection and some other stuff on it to really help that. As for the car models, I think they're really pretty neat. And I think your animation's looking pretty good. Maybe just clean it up a little bit in the way this passing happens. It kind of feels like the tires slide just a little bit. But I kind of like this little like hesitation, and then it like sort of pulls back. It doesn't really pull back. It's almost like I can feel it like the shifting over to, it's like almost like they shifted gears to pass them. But I think it still needs a little bit of cleanup, and and just to kind of help it along a little bit. But I like the shape of them, and I kind of like what you've done there. Yeah, you can kind of see the stretching a little bit in the clouds as well. The camera is nice and subtle, so yeah, keep up the good work there. I think anything you can do to get some more information about shadows in these hills would help as well. Right now it's feeling like this doesn't feel like it's really getting that much shadow on it. I'm not 100% sure how you're rendering this. This feels like Viewport 2.0, but it also kind of feels like maybe the ambient occlusion isn't on, or maybe even, well, I think that it is, because I'm seeing it under the cars. I'm just not really feeling like I'm seeing it anywhere else. So a little bit more work on the lighting, I think, to get some more interesting lighting in this would help. But yeah, otherwise, keep up the good work. Keep up. It takes a lot of effort, so just keep working hard on it. So Valerie. So I was going to loop. Yeah, there it goes. So a couple of things. I think Nathan earlier had the same issue where like some of these are just like rendering as like flat colors. And that's really in this stark contrast to what you're seeing on the ground here. We have a lot of texture, and you have that on the road too, and even the background here. So like I think you're just getting this really contrasty result that isn't communicating very well. So I would sort of pick a style, either a lot of texture or like the flat color isn't really reading very well, so it needs some shadow or drop off on there. But I think you need to kind of work with that a little bit to get something more consistent. The other thing is, like, just because the texture says grass doesn't mean that this is going to read correctly as grass, because at this scale, this looks like giant green logs all over the ground, right? Like, it doesn't necessarily feel like that's grass, because one blade of grass is bigger than the car. And so sometimes, like, you have to kind of fake that look, right? Like, what would grass look like from a helicopter, because you're kind of, up in the air. The transparency on this water is working, but it also feels like kind of shallow. I think it just needs some highlights and some reflections and ripples in it. The animation, sort of the two things that are animated are the cars and the camera. Again, I think the camera motion maybe is a little too much, just a little bit. Maybe sort of not start from quite so far away at the beginning here, where we're like way back here, looking almost straight down, zooming in. Like it's kind of an odd camera angle, so it's harder for us to pay attention to the cars for some reason. And like we're not getting very much environment information. So from the very first frame, I'm like, wait, what? Where are we? Like, I think sort of an establishing shot, even like something like this end shot, tells us a lot more about the scene, and so then we can just start immediately enjoying the cars because we understand the scene. I like the idea of what you're going for, this little little dance thing that they do. There's just a lot of sliding in that, and so I think that it's kind of hard to. It feels unnatural in the way that it happens. So I mean, I think what I would do is maybe look up some video reference, maybe something from an action movie or whatever, where a car is having to do a full U-turn like kind of quickly, and try to see if you can copy that motion or try to get a similar looking motion. Because right now I can just kind of feel the computer at work there. Like the way it rotates feels like a simple like computer rotation or computer calculated rotation, instead of like the car is having to like skid, and then like if you notice they start moving forward again before they're even done turning around, which wouldn't make sense because the tires are what's driving that, and so like it just doesn't feel like that's the natural turn. I like the idea. I think I would just sort of make sure you're executing the motion as clearly as possible, or as accurately as possible. And then I think it would just simplify the camera a little bit. Right now, the biggest thing is like I like the attempt at texture, but I think you're trying to come up with some solutions that are clearer. This repeating texture may help. Like you may be able to take that grass and have it repeat, like 50 by 50 instead of 10 by 10, and start getting something that feels a little bit more like actual grass to you. Okay, and also again, like I'm not really seeing any sign of shadows or lighting in here, and that's a big drawback on there. I think some of it's being detracted by the fact that like these areas are so flat colored, like the cars and the bridge. But I think some of it is just I don't think that there's any lighting, or lighting is turned off on this. So again, the way you turn that on is making sure that all these buttons are turned on. These last two you don't have to, but that's how you can make sure that you have lights turned on. So again, keep up the hard work and let me know if you have any questions. So last one, Zachary Bowman. So I think earlier I said to someone that they seem to really be enjoying the modeling part. You seem to really be enjoying the animation part. So I may be wrong there, but that just kind of strikes me as you're liking to set the keyframes and see how that changes the motion. So I think that's cool. Keep playing with it. I think what I would do is like sort of do one more pass on the motion, asking yourself if all of that is accurate. Like I think the flips look kind of neat. But you got to think about the forces involved here. Like for that van to flip forward, it needs to have some forward momentum, and it kind of just sort of flips from the ground. And so it feels like that would work better if it flipped as it was moving forward, right? Like some booster or something in the rear end caused it to flip as it was driving forward, instead of like flipping from a stop, right? So it's like it stopped right here and then it flips. And so I know we're asking a vehicle to do something impossible, but the other thing, you'll kind of see this from the most current videos, the way the vehicle lands is kind of like soft. It hits kind of soft here, slows down, and then lands. And like the truck, I think, does the flip a little bit more accurately. Like it kind of stops a little bit right there, but I think it would just kind of start flipping from here and then just go right over it like that. And then I can't really, like the way it turns here, like that's like sliding. So I'm kind of nitpicking the animation, but that's because you have a lot of it. And I think that just gives us some extra stuff to work on. Yeah, keep working on it. The other thing I would say is like your camera's moving a lot, and is not as noticeable during this first little section here, but it's really noticeable right here when we flip around there. And that's like another one of those camera moves that are just impossible. I think what I would consider doing is trying to minimize the camera motion and then to cut around to that, just showing a camera cut. In terms of lighting, this one's interesting. It almost feels like it's at nighttime, but the shadows aren't quite dark enough on this side over here. It feels like maybe the moon is over here shining in this direction. Like the ground is really dark, and I like the water ripples you have here. If we could get those like smaller, I think that would help too, though, because this feels like big waves. I'm just not really seeing a lot about the environment in any of this. Like we kind of see when we flip around here. See if I can pause it. Right here, we see some of your environment, but really through the rest of the animation, like we only see like a little corner right here. And so maybe it's just an idea to lower your camera a little bit, and get the horizon line a little more clear. Just sort of playing with the camera a little bit to show off your scene the best way possible. But again, like it's not that necessarily you have to have a lot of ground plane. It just kind of feels like otherwise this bridge is floating in the water, and then that feels a little weird. My 2 cents, usually bridges aren't quite that close to the water either. Like I would maybe lower the water in the ground just a little bit, because like water rises and lowers like a kind of regular intervals, and so you wouldn't want it to wash the bridge out. So usually the water would be just a little lower than that. So I think that, and playing around with the lighting, and then just continue to polish that animation. I think yeah, just keep up the hard work. So I think that we're done with everybody. That's 13 animations, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 people. So is that right? I feel like maybe we're missing one. Anyway, so yeah, let me know if you have any questions, and otherwise, keep up the good work, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.